Good morning, everyone. Life has a way of throwing storms at us when we least expect them. Bills pile up, relationships get strained, health challenges appear, and our dreams seem stalled. It's in those moments that fear and anxiety creep in, making us forget a simple but powerful truth. God is always at work, even when we can't see it. I want to remind you today that your heart can find rest because God is preparing the way for you. The path may seem uncertain, the timing may seem slow, but nothing happens in your life outside of His plan. Just as a gardener prepares the soil before planting seeds, God is preparing circumstances, people, and opportunities in your life that you don't even know about yet. When you calm your heart and trust Him, three things happen. First, your mind finds peace. Second, your faith grows stronger. And third, you begin to recognize God's hand in ways you would have missed if you were panicking. Remember, patience is not waiting in fear, it's waiting in faith. So breathe today. Release your worries. Step back from the pressure and look at the bigger picture. God's timing is perfect, His provision is sufficient, and His promises are sure. Your breakthrough is on the way, and it often comes exactly when you need it most. Let your heart be calm. Stand firm in faith, and trust that the God who has never failed you will not start now. When life feels overwhelming, when storms rise on every side, it's easy to feel like we are adrift in a sea of chaos. Bills, responsibilities, setbacks, and unexpected challenges can press in from all directions, and our hearts begin to race with worry. We start asking, why is this happening to me? Or how am I ever going to get through this? In those moments, it's tempting to believe that life is happening randomly, that circumstances are out of our control, and that we are alone in facing these trials. But the truth, the eternal truth that should anchor every part of our soul is that God is sovereign. Everything in your life, every detail, every timing, every open door, and even every closed door is under His divine control. Nothing is accidental, nothing is meaningless, and nothing catches Him off guard. Recognizing God's sovereignty means acknowledging that He is not only aware of your situation, but He is actively working in it. When storms come, they are not signs of His absence. When doors close, they are not proof that He has forgotten you. When life feels chaotic and uncertain, it is often because God is orchestrating the pieces of your life in ways you cannot yet see. Like a master strategist, He moves behind the scenes, arranging circumstances, shaping people, and guiding decisions to fulfill His perfect plan. Your role is not to control the outcome, but to trust that He does. It's easy to trust God when life is smooth, when the sun is shining and everything seems to go our way. But the test of recognizing God's sovereignty comes when the waves crash around us, when our resources feel limited, and when our understanding falls short. In those moments, faith is not a vague hope. It's a conscious choice to believe that God knows what He is doing. It is choosing to rest in the truth that the Creator of the universe, the one who holds the stars in place and measures the oceans in the hollow of His hand, is also in control of your life. That perspective changes everything. Fear loses its grip. Anxiety begins to loosen, and peace, the peace that surpasses understanding, starts to take root in your heart. To recognize God's sovereignty is to understand that nothing is wasted. Every trial, every delay, every moment of waiting is part of the preparation for something greater. Even mistakes, setbacks, and disappointments are tools in God's hands to teach, refine, and direct you toward His intended outcome. You may not understand why certain things happen, but that does not mean they are meaningless. Every closed door is a redirection toward a better path. Every storm is a training ground for strength, patience, and character. And every season of waiting is a time for God to work in ways you cannot yet comprehend. This recognition also brings freedom. When you truly believe that God is sovereign, you are no longer enslaved to worry or panic. You are free to focus on what you can do while leaving the rest in His capable hands. You no longer have to manipulate outcomes, rush timelines, or stress over decisions that are ultimately beyond your control. Instead, you can live with confidence, knowing that he who rules over heaven and earth is working for your good. Even when the path seems unclear, you can walk through life with a calm heart because the one who holds the world together also holds your life. Recognizing God's sovereignty does not mean life will always be easy. Challenges will come, pain will exist, circumstances may be difficult, but it means that nothing is random, nothing is meaningless, and nothing can thwart the plans of a God who loves you perfectly and has a purpose for your life. When you keep this truth at the forefront of your mind, your perspective shifts. You begin to see trials not as obstacles, but as opportunities for God to demonstrate his power, provision, and faithfulness. You begin to see delays not as denials, but as divine preparation for blessings beyond what you can imagine. And you begin to trust that no matter what, you are never outside the scope of his control or the depth of his love. Your life, your journey, your challenges, all are in his hands. The storms that threaten to shake you, the mountains that seem impossible to climb, the valleys that feel endless, God is sovereign over them all. And because he is sovereign, you can stand with confidence, rest in his timing, and move forward with faith, knowing that your God is not just watching from a distance, but actively preparing the way for your victory, your breakthrough, and your ultimate good. Patience is one of the most challenging virtues to cultivate in our fast-paced world. We live in a society that thrives on instant results, immediate answers, and quick fixes. When we plant a seed, we expect it to sprout overnight. When we work toward a goal, we hope to see progress in a matter of days. When prayers are offered, we anticipate answers according to our timetable. But life, and more importantly, God's plan, does not operate on our schedule. This is where patience becomes an act of faith. True patience is not simply waiting, it is trusting that God is at work even when we cannot see it. It is faith in motion, exercised in the moments of delay, in the pauses, and in the seasons of uncertainty. Patience is faith acting on the belief that God's timing is perfect. When we are impatient, we are essentially saying that we know better than God, that we can orchestrate our own lives more effectively than the creator of the universe. But every delay, every moment of waiting, every season that tests our endurance is a deliberate part of God's preparation. The path that seems long or difficult is often the path that shapes our character, strengthens our resolve, and positions us for something greater than we could have imagined. Patience is the acknowledgement that God sees the whole picture while we can only see a fragment. It is choosing to rest in his omniscience rather than succumbing to the anxiety that comes from our limited understanding. When we practice patience, we allow God to work behind the scenes in ways that we might never anticipate. It is in the waiting that he is often doing his most critical work, aligning circumstances, preparing people, and opening doors that we could not open ourselves. Consider the growth of a tree. The seed does not sprout instantly. The roots do not develop overnight, and the fruit does not appear as soon as the leaves unfurl. The growth is gradual, unseen at first, but necessary for the strength and sustenance of the tree. Similarly, our lives require a process of preparation, and patience is the faith that believes the waiting is not wasted, that every moment of endurance is cultivating something essential for our ultimate blessing. Patience also guards our hearts from impulsive decisions that can lead to unnecessary pain or missed opportunities. When we act out of haste or frustration, we often make choices that do not honor God's plan. Impatience can lead us down a path of regret, compromise, or temporary relief that brings long-term consequences. But patience, fueled by faith, allows us to pause, to seek God's guidance, and to align our actions with his will. It transforms waiting from a passive state into an active posture of trust. It teaches us to submit our timing to God's, to recognize that his ways are higher than ours, and to believe that what he has planned will always be better than what we can manufacture on our own. Practicing patience also strengthens our spiritual resilience. When we wait on God, we develop endurance, humility, and perseverance. Our character is refined as we learn to rely not on our own understanding, but on His wisdom. Waiting tests our faith, but it also builds it. It trains us to be steady in hope, unwavering in trust, and confident in God's promises. Each moment of patience is a small act of worship, a demonstration of our belief that God is faithful and that His timing is always perfect. Moreover, patience provides peace in the present moment. It allows us to rest in God's care rather than being consumed by anxiety over the future. It reminds us that while we may not see the outcome, the one who controls the outcome is faithful. This peace does not mean life is without challenges. Then we can face those challenges with a calm heart, knowing that God is orchestrating every detail. The storms may come, the obstacles may rise, but patience reminds us that God is sovereign over them all and that He is using even the delays to shape something extraordinary in our lives. Ultimately, patience is an active expression of faith. It is faith applied in real time, in the waiting, in the uncertainty, and in the pauses. It is trusting that God is working behind the scenes, even when the evidence seems hidden. It is believing that His timing is perfect, His plan is good, and His promises are sure. Patience is not passive resignation. It is confident expectation. It is saying, Lord, I may not see the whole picture, but I trust that You are guiding me, preparing me, and orchestrating the way for my good. When anxiety threatens to take over, when worry seems to grip every thought, and when life's pressures feel overwhelming, there is a powerful refuge that we often overlook: prayer. Prayer is not just a ritual or a habit. It is the bridge that connects our anxious, restless hearts to the peace and power of God. It is in prayer that our fears meet His faithfulness, our confusion meets His wisdom, and our burdens meet His strength. Calming your heart through prayer is not a suggestion. It is a command and an invitation. It is the practical way we release control while affirming our trust in a God who is able to do far more than we could ask or imagine. When we pray, we are acknowledging something profoundly important. We are not in control, but God is. We admit that our minds cannot always solve our problems. Our hearts cannot always bear our burdens, and our timing is often flawed. Prayer is the surrender of our limited understanding and the embrace of His infinite wisdom. It is a declaration that no matter how chaotic the circumstances, we are willing to trust the one who holds the universe in His hands. This act alone begins to calm the racing heart. The moment we lift our worries to God in prayer, the weight of carrying them alone begins to lighten. Calmness through prayer comes because prayer reorients our perspective. Anxiety thrives on a narrow view, on focusing solely on problems, delays, or fears. But when we pray, we shift our gaze from the storm to the one who controls it. We begin to see challenges through God's eyes rather than our own. We remember that nothing is accidental, that He is sovereign over every detail, and that He is working all things together for our good. In that shift of focus, our hearts find rest. The power of prayer is not always in the immediate change of circumstances, but in the immediate change of our hearts. When we pray, we exchange panic for trust, despair for hope, and fear for peace. Prayer also provides clarity in times of confusion. When we face uncertainty, it is natural to feel overwhelmed and uncertain about what steps to take. But prayer allows us to pause, step back, and seek God's guidance. It slows down the rush of emotion and replaces it with divine insight. As we speak to God and listen for His direction, our hearts settle because we are reminded that the one who knows the end from the beginning is guiding our steps. He never misses a detail, and He always knows the way forward. Calm hearts are the result of hearts that lean on Him rather than on their own limited understanding. Another way prayer calms the heart is by cultivating intimacy with God. Anxiety and fear often make us feel isolated, as if we are facing life alone. But through prayer, we are reminded that we are never alone. We are conversing with the Creator, the Sustainer, the God who loves us unconditionally. Every prayer is an opportunity to draw near to Him, to pour out our hearts and to hear His reassuring voice through Scripture, insight, or the still small whisper of the Spirit. This connection reminds us that our lives are held in a divine hand, and that alone brings profound peace. Prayer also empowers action. Calming your heart does not mean sitting idle. It means approaching challenges with a spirit of trust and discernment. Through prayer, we receive wisdom to act with clarity, courage, and confidence, rather than impulsively or out of panic. It equips us to handle circumstances with composure and faith, knowing that God's guidance accompanies every step. Calmness through prayer is therefore active. It does not remove responsibility, but it fills responsibility with divine wisdom, protection, and empowerment. Finally, consistent prayer transforms our hearts over time. The more we practice lifting every concern to God, the more natural it becomes to respond to stress with faith rather than fear. We train our hearts to rest in His promises, to remember His faithfulness, and to trust His timing. Over time, prayer becomes a refuge we instinctively turn to when life pressures mount. Our hearts are calmed, our minds are steadied, and our souls are anchored in the One who never fails. When you calm your heart through prayer, you are not ignoring the challenges of life. You are not pretending problems do not exist. Instead, you are actively positioning yourself in the presence of the One who can handle them, transforming anxiety into peace, confusion into clarity, and fear into unwavering trust. Prayer is the lifeline that steadies the heart, aligns the mind, and fortifies the spirit, reminding us that no matter how turbulent the waters, God is our anchor and our refuge. It is easy to overlook the small moments in life. We are often so focused on the big breakthroughs, the major victories, or the dramatic signs of God's intervention that we miss the subtle ways He is working in our daily lives. Yet God's hand is present in the details, the quiet whispers, the unnoticed blessings, the gentle nudges, and the circumstances that seem ordinary. Learning to recognize His hand in the small things is essential, because these moments are often where God is preparing us for greater things. When we train ourselves to see His work in the little things, our faith grows, our hearts are encouraged, and our perspective shifts from anxiety to trust. The small things in life often carry the fingerprints of God. A timely conversation with a friend, a door that opens unexpectedly, an encouraging word in a moment of doubt. These are not coincidences. They are divine interventions, subtle reminders that God is present and actively involved in your life. Recognizing them requires intentionality. It requires us to slow down, to pay attention, and to reflect on the events of our day with eyes of faith. When we do this consistently, we begin to see a pattern of God's guidance, protection, and provision that we would have otherwise overlooked. What seems like chance is actually a part of God's perfect orchestration. Looking for God's hand in the small things also builds gratitude. When we notice the little blessings, a warm meal, a kind gesture, a moment of peace, we are reminded that God cares about every aspect of our lives. He is not only concerned with the monumental moments, but also with the everyday experiences that shape our journey. Gratitude for the small things strengthens our faith because it reinforces the truth that God is faithful in all circumstances, not just in the moments we deem significant. It reminds us that His provision is constant, His love is unwavering, and His attention to our lives is detailed and personal. Sometimes God's hand in the small things comes as correction or guidance. A slight delay, a minor setback, or an unexpected detour may seem inconvenient or frustrating at first. But when we look closely, we often realize that these small adjustments are God's way of protecting us, redirecting us, or preparing us for something better. Just as a potter carefully shapes clay, God uses the small moments to mold our character, refine our choices, and align our steps with His plan. When we learn to recognize His guidance in these subtle ways, we become more discerning, more patient, and more aligned with His will. The small things also provide reassurance in times of uncertainty. When the future seems unclear and the path ahead looks daunting, noticing God's hand in everyday events reminds us that He is always at work. It can be a word of encouragement from a loved one, a scripture verse that comes at the perfect time, or an unexpected opportunity that arises seemingly out of nowhere. These moments serve as tangible reminders that God is present and that His plans are unfolding. Even when we cannot see the full picture, they are proof that we are not navigating life alone and that His power is at work in ways both visible and invisible. Recognizing God's hand in small things also trains our faith. Faith is strengthened not only by dramatic miracles, but also by consistent experiences of God's care and guidance in everyday life. When we learn to see Him in the ordinary, we begin to trust Him more fully in the extraordinary. Each small intervention becomes evidence of His reliability and faithfulness, building a foundation of trust that carries us through bigger challenges. Faith grows as we connect the dots between the seemingly insignificant moments and the larger narrative of God's purpose for our lives. Moreover, we acknowledge God in the small things, our hearts are filled with hope and anticipation. We begin to expect His presence and intervention in all areas of life, no matter how small or routine they may seem. This awareness transforms our perspective. No moment is insignificant, no event is accidental, and no day passes without His fingerprints on it. We learn to celebrate the little victories, to appreciate the subtle guidance, and to trust that God's care extends to every detail of our life. Looking for God's hand in small things is ultimately about living with spiritual sensitivity. It requires attentiveness, reflection, and gratitude. It is about recognizing that His involvement in our lives is constant and intimate, not sporadic or distant. As we develop this awareness, our hearts grow calm, our faith grows deep, and our perspective is shaped by the confidence that God is always working for our good, even in ways that might seem insignificant at first glance. Expectation is a powerful force, especially when it is rooted in faith. Many people live their lives waiting, hoping, and even praying, but they do so with uncertainty or doubt. They may work hard, remain faithful, and persevere through trials, yet they hesitate to believe that something extraordinary is coming. To expect a breakthrough is not wishful thinking or blind optimism. It is a confident trust in God's promises, a spiritual posture that aligns your heart with His timing and His plan. Expectation activates faith and prepares your heart to receive what God has already set in motion. When you expect a breakthrough, you are acknowledging that God is not only at work, but that His work is about to manifest in ways that will change your situation for the better. Expecting the breakthrough requires vision. You must see beyond the present circumstances, beyond the challenges, setbacks, and delays, to the moment when God's promise will become visible. Too often, people focus on the problems rather than the promises. They dwell on the obstacles rather than the one who can overcome them. But when you focus your eyes on God's faithfulness and His word, you train your heart to anticipate the fulfillment of His plan. Expectation is born from knowledge of His character. God is faithful, He is just, and He never forgets His children. Knowing this, you can live today with the confident belief that the breakthrough is coming, even if you cannot see it yet. Expectation also fuels perseverance. Waiting for a breakthrough can be difficult. It may take weeks, months, or even years for your circumstances to change. But when you expect God to act, waiting becomes purposeful. Every trial, every challenge, every setback is no longer meaningless. It is part of the preparation for what God is about to do. Expectation transforms your perspective. Obstacles become training grounds, delays become refining seasons, and hardships become evidence that God is shaping you for what is to come. This mindset empowers you to endure with hope rather than despair. Another key aspect of expecting the breakthrough is aligning your actions with your faith. Expectation is not passive. It requires you to remain active, diligent, and obedient. While you anticipate God's move, you continue to sow seeds, make wise decisions, and walk in integrity. Your faith and your actions work together, creating a fertile environment for God to bring his promises to fruition. Breakthrough is rarely instant. It often comes after consistent effort, prayer, and trust. But knowing that God is faithful allows you to persist with confidence, believing that every step you take is leading you closer to the moment of breakthrough. Expectation also sharpens your spiritual sensitivity. When you are looking for God to act, you begin to notice the subtle ways he is preparing the way. Small opportunities, timely words of encouragement, doors that open unexpectedly. These are often the precursors to the larger breakthroughs. By expecting God to intervene, you cultivate a spiritual awareness that allows you to recognize and seize these moments. Expectation tunes your heart to God's timing and enables you to move in harmony with his plan. Moreover, expecting the breakthrough strengthens your faith in God's character and promises. Each experience, each answered prayer, each moment of provision builds confidence in the one who has never failed. When you live in expectation, you are declaring that you believe God is able and willing to act on your behalf. You are refusing to settle for less than what he has promised and are preparing your heart to receive the fullness of his blessing. Your mindset shifts from scarcity and doubt to abundance and trust, which in turn attracts the manifestation of God's promises. Finally, expectation brings peace in the waiting. There is a difference between anxious waiting and hopeful expectation. Anxious waiting is filled with fear, doubt, and frustration, while expecting a breakthrough is rooted in trust, confidence, and hope. When you expect God to act, your heart rests in his timing. You are assured that what he has promised will come to pass, and you are ready to celebrate the moment when it does. This peace sustains you through difficult seasons, strengthens your faith, and positions you to receive the breakthrough with gratitude and joy. To expect the breakthrough is to live boldly in faith. It is to believe that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances and aligning opportunities for your good. It is to keep your eyes on him, your heart confident, and your hands faithful, knowing that the moment of breakthrough is not a matter of chance, but a matter of God's promise. When you expect the breakthrough, you walk in hope, act in faith, and stand ready to receive the fullness of God's blessing. Timing is one of the hardest things for human hearts to understand. We want results now. We want doors to open immediately. We want answers instantly. But God's timing is never rushed, and it is never late. It is perfect. Trusting God's timing means believing that he knows the exact moment to bring about what is best for our lives. It requires surrender, patience, and a deep confidence that the delays we experience are not denials, but preparations. When we fully grasp this truth, our hearts can find rest even in the midst of uncertainty. Many of us struggle because we measure time in human terms, using weeks, months, or years to determine whether something is working or not. We see a situation that has not changed and assume God has forgotten us, that he is inactive or indifferent. But God operates outside of time. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end simultaneously. What appears slow from our perspective is often just the perfect pace for the unfolding of his plan. Trusting his timing means letting go of our impatience, our need for control, and our desire for immediate satisfaction, and instead embracing the rhythm of his divine schedule. Trusting God's timing requires faith in the unseen. We often want evidence before we believe, results before we hope, or certainty before we act. But faith is the ability to see the invisible and trust it. It is believing that God is moving even when there is no outward sign of progress. It is knowing that He is aligning circumstances, preparing people, and orchestrating events behind the scenes to bring about the breakthrough we long for. The Bible often reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways, and His timing is perfect. To trust Him is to accept that His perspective is far greater than our own, and that His timing is always best. This trust transforms how we handle delays and obstacles. Waiting is never easy. But when we trust God's timing, waiting becomes a season of growth rather than a period of frustration. Each moment of delay has purpose. It teaches us patience, humility, and perseverance. It allows God to refine our character, test our faith, and prepare our hearts for what is to come. In fact, many of the greatest blessings in life are after periods of waiting, precisely because we are better equipped to receive them when the time is right. God's delays are often His mercies, designed to shape us and protect us in ways we cannot yet understand. Trusting God's timing also requires vigilance and attentiveness. When we expect Him to act at the right moment, we are ready to recognize His opportunities. Small signs, seemingly coincidental events, and even ordinary circumstances can carry the mark of divine timing. Those who trust God's timing are alert and prepared. They do not miss the open doors He provides because they are not focused solely on the frustration of waiting. They recognize that His timing is not only perfect, but also intentional, and that even the smallest details are orchestrated for their ultimate good. Moreover, trusting God's timing brings peace in the present. Anxiety and stress often stem from trying to force our own timelines or comparing our progress with that of others. But when we trust God's schedule, we can live fully in the moment, secure in the knowledge that He is working all things together for our good. This trust frees our hearts from worry, strengthens our confidence, and allows us to focus on the work, growth, and opportunities that God has placed in front of us right now. Trusting God's timing also strengthens hope. When we have confidence that God will act at exactly the right moment, we can hold on during seasons of uncertainty without losing faith. Our hope is anchored in His character rather than in circumstances. And this hope sustains us even when the road is long or the outcome seems delayed. It reminds us that His promises are sure, His plans are perfect, and His provision is never too late. Finally, trusting God's timing requires surrender. We must release the need to control every detail, to force outcomes, and to dictate our own schedule. Surrender is not weakness, it is strength. It is an acknowledgement that God is wiser than we are, that He sees what we cannot see, and that His timing is always for our ultimate good. When we surrender to His timing, our hearts are calmed, our spirits are steadied, and we can step forward in faith, confident that God is preparing the way exactly when we need it.